You didn't know what it was. You just felt that the world was collapsing inside you. It wasn't a death, nor a sudden tragedy. It was a weakening from within, a wear and tear that doesn't scream, but corrodes everything. You didn't cry, but you didn't smile either. Your soul seemed too tired even to ask for help. So you isolated yourself, in a room, in a corner of the house, or maybe just inside your own head. You didn't talk to anyone. You didn't explain. You didn't justify yourself. You sat down. You stared into the void and waited for something to change. That's when he appeared. You didn't even notice it right away. But suddenly, he was there. The dog, the cat, or even a bird that landed on the window, silent, attentive, present. He didn't make a fuss. He didn't hug you. He didn't bark. He didn't make any sound. Just arrived. And for some reason that you still don't understand today, your breathing changed. Your chest, which seemed shrunken, widened a little. The silence, which was once despair, became presence. You thought he was just an animal, but now looking back you begin to doubt that. Because he arrived just when you were falling, as if it were an answer, as if he knew that there was an exact point where the soul touches the bottom, and that was where he should be. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, said that the world is governed by an invisible force, the LOGOS, a cosmic reason that permeates everything, unites everything, organizes everything, and perhaps what we call chance is just the LOGOS disguised as coincidence. You didn't call, but he came. You didn't tell your pain, but he felt it and sat down, or lay down, or just stayed there, close enough for you to know you are not alone. And that's how it started. That moment when any animal, that could be anywhere, decided to be with you. And that wasn't a random choice. It was a cosmic gesture. It was the LOGOS leaning into your abyss and using paws, wings, or silent eyes to touch you. You were still bad. You still hadn't healed. But somehow, you weren't falling like before. Because he arrived. And he wasn't just a dog, or a cat, or a bird. He was the presence that nature sent you when everything inside you was collapsing, and no one else knew how to listen. Zeno didn't speak of God as a distant figure. For him, the divine was not someone. It was something. It was the very reason that sows the universe. That reason had a name, Logos. It wasn't an idea, it was a movement, a logic that governs chaos without punishment, only with balance. Zeno believed that if you listened carefully, you would perceive the LOGOS acting in everything. In the changing of the seasons, in the reaction of bodies to disease, in the way rivers bend when they encounter stone, and also in the way animals appear, not as magicians, nor as miracles, but as physical responses to an invisible disorganization. You were breaking inside. Maybe you didn't even know it clearly. You just felt that everything was out of place. Feelings were shuffled. The mind didn't obey. The body was a heavy shell. And then he arrived. It wasn't magic, but it was exact. Zeno said that the LOGOS responds to disorder as the body reacts to fever with precision. You don't control that, but you feel it. So also the LOGOS acts with the soul. When you get lost, something or someone appears to mark the axis. That someone sometimes has pause. You call it coincidence. But why did he appear precisely on that day, on that street, in that window, in that exact position where your pain no longer knew how to breathe? Stoic logic does not accept randomness. It accepts implicit order. You don't need to understand. You need to open yourself. The animal didn't appear for you to cling to. He appeared for you to align yourself. And you know that. Because he didn't make a speech, he didn't offer advice, he didn't say everything would be okay, he just stayed. He breathed with you. He looked with eyes that didn't ask for explanation. And your soul, tired of arguments, finally silenced. Zeno said that virtue is in living according to nature. And perhaps at that moment, nature sent you a piece of itself to remind you of who you were before the disorder. Because pain messes everything up. You forget who you are, you get lost in thoughts, you sabotage yourself, you close yourself off. And the LOGOS then responds, not with miracles, but with gestures, with presences, with small adjustments that seem irrelevant, but that reorganize everything. His arrival was an adjustment. You were distorted, crooked inside, misaligned from your own truth, and the simple presence of an animal forced you to stop, to breathe differently, to feel what you were trying to silence. The Logos doesn't speak, but it acts, and it acts with the precision of someone who knows you better than you do yourself. Maybe that's why, after that day, you couldn't face certain habits anymore, or certain people, or certain escapes. Not because the animal told you something, but because something inside you was reoriented. He stayed there for minutes, or days, or weeks. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he appeared at the exact point where universal reason needed to intervene. You think you chose to adopt him, or that he chose you. But Zeno would smile at that, because the Logos doesn't care who chose whom. It only cares about who needed whom. And more than that, with what needed to be reorganized. You don't know if it was real, if it was spiritual, or if it was just psychological, but you know it changed. And philosophy doesn't want to know if it was an angel, destiny, or chance. It wants to know if you went back to breathing, like someone who belongs to the world, and not just resists it. And at that moment, when he arrived, the world made sense again. Not because everything was resolved, but because for the first time in a long time, you felt that something was right, even in the midst of pain. You began to get used to him, with the presence, with the breathing nearby, with the sound of soft steps around the house. It seemed that he had come to fill a void, but in fact he only illuminated the space that you needed to recognize. And then he left, without warning, without drama, without farewell. Maybe it was an animal that appeared on the street during your morning and never came back, or that unknown cat that came to your window every afternoon and now disappeared, or even the dog that slept by your side for months and now spends his days in another room, distant, silent, absent. You miss him, and you start to wonder, did I do something wrong? Why did he disappear just now that I loved him? But maybe that's the hardest part of the Logos answer. It only sends what is necessary at the exact time it is necessary. And then it withdraws, not as punishment, but for purpose. Zeno taught that nature does nothing in vain. And if that animal arrived when you were collapsing, it was because your soul was screaming for reorganization. But now, you are already in another state, not fully healed, but awake, with the most visible cracks, with the chaos a little less noisy, and the Logos understands that the presence no longer needs to remain, because what it needed to touch has already been touched. The animal that appeared in your pain didn't come to live. He came to align. And alignments are not sustained with attachment, but with awareness. You don't need to hold him, because he has already fulfilled his invisible function. He has already moved the plates of your soul. He has already put you back on a direction that you had lost. That's why the longing you feel is not common. It has no shape, nor history, nor routine. It is a symbolic longing for something that crossed you and left at the exact moment it became unnecessary. You try to interpret the departure, but nature doesn't explain. It only executes. The Logos does not negotiate with feelings. It acts with almost cruel precision, and removes the instrument after the music has already done what it needed to do. The animal was an instrument of reorganization, of interruption, of the touch that you didn't allow anyone else. And that's why he couldn't stay. You look at the places where he used to be, to the window, to the corner of the room, to the door he waited for in silence, and you feel that something has been removed, but at the same time you know that something remained. A serenity, a memory, a silent lightness in the midst of pain, as if he had left an invisible part of himself inside you, not to be remembered, but to be continued. Zeno said that virtue is to follow nature, and nature never stops. It flows, it intervenes, it moves away, it transforms. The animal that left didn't go away. He just followed the flow that you also need to follow. You think you lost, but in fact, it was you who was returned to yourself. He didn't come to be yours, nor to become attachment. He came so that you would remember what it's like to be whole, even in the face of emptiness. And now that you feel that emptiness, but you can remain standing, you begin to understand. His presence was not a casual affection. It was the physical gesture of a cosmic gear. It was the Logos responding to your pain with the purest form of interruption, a simple body, arriving, breathing, leaving, and you, becoming different forever. You talked to so many people, you explained, you justified, you vented, and yet, nothing changed. The knot continued. The restlessness persisted. The pain dragged on. That's when you realize something. He didn't say anything. And yet, he listened to you. The animal doesn't understand your language, but he understands your vibration. He doesn't analyze, but he feels the misalignment. He doesn't interpret, but he notices when pain hides under routine. Zeno said that the Logos dwells in everything that is natural, not only in ideas but in forms, in stones, in rivers, in seasons, and in bodies that don't lie. And the animal is the body that doesn't lie. He doesn't ask what happened. He just arrives and lies down, or remains standing, or rests his head on your leg, and you feel that something yields inside, without conversation, without speech, without rationalization, just yields. The pain doesn't disappear, but it slows down. The anguish doesn't go away, but it seems to have another weight. And time, for an instant, organizes itself. This is the presence that the Logos sends when you are about to leave the axis, but you still have a chance to return. Zeno did not believe in divine intervention as sudden miracles. He believed in harmony, and harmony manifests when you are visited by someone who didn't come to convince you of anything, but just to exist by your side. The animal doesn't judge, but he doesn't deceive himself either. He approaches those who vibrate truth, and moves away when there is too much dissonance. And sometimes when your pain is authentic, when it is raw, silent, without self-pity, he approaches, as if to say, now you are ready not to run away. Because his presence is an invitation to stay with yourself. And there is nothing more difficult than that. You tried to escape the pain, you anesthetized, you rationalized, you compared it to greater pains. But his silence did not allow escape. He just stayed. And that hurt more. Because now, there was no distraction. There was no comfort. There was a body, breathing, observing, being. And you needed to face what you had been trying to avoid, that healing begins with the courage not to move away from yourself. The Logos moves, but does not scream. It touches you from within, through what moves you from the outside. And the animal is the most direct channel of this communication. He has no doctrine, he has no morals, he has no speech, but he has presence, he has time, he has silence. And his silence forces you to look, to hear what is beneath the thought, to feel what you stifled with arguments. You thought you needed answers, but he didn't bring you any. He brought a mirror that breathes, that walks, that sits by your side and just exists. And at that moment you realized it's not what he does, it's what he doesn't demand. He doesn't force you to speak, he doesn't want you to smile, he doesn't ask you to get better, he just allows you to be, without performance. And that's rare, that's sacred. Zeno said that virtue is in living according to nature, but for that, it is necessary to first silence everything that is not natural in you. The animal is the master of the necessary silence. He doesn't explain you, but he cleans you, not with big gestures, but with the constancy of the presence that does not abandon you while you do not find your own axis again. And you, little by little, stop expecting comfort. You start breathing with more weight, to step with more root, to remember that your pain is part of the flow, and that it doesn't need to be overcome, just accepted. And when you understand that, when you accept that there is no cure without presence, his presence begins to seem sufficient. What was once absence of words now is language. What was once just an animal standing by your side now is a confirmation. You are not alone. You were just trying to distract yourself from yourself. And now, with him there, you feel that you can stay. He is no longer there, but you continue to feel. The presence became memory, the silence became teaching, and the pain became ground. You look at the corner where he used to lie, to the window where he appeared, to the path where he found you, and you don't feel longing in the common sense. You feel something else, more dense, more deep, as if something had been engraved on you, not with words but with existence, because now you know, he didn't appear by chance. He was sent, not by a god with a white beard, but by the invisible order that governs everything that lives. Zeno called this LOGOS, the cosmic reason that responds with precision where emotion tries to drown, the silent intelligence that doesn't need to explain, just correct. And maybe you were about to get lost, not in a scandalous way, but in that kind of loss that no one sees. The one that starts with a small departure from your own truth, with a toxic thought accepted in silence, with an unnamed discouragement, with a subtle disconnection from what kept you whole. The LOGOS felt it and sent. Not an angel, not a word, but a body, simple, pure, present, and it was enough. You still don't understand everything, but you understand more than before. You understand that nature moves, and that when it moves an animal to you, it's not to entertain you, it's to wake you up. The animal that appeared was the physical gesture of the answer you asked for with your heart, but couldn't formulate with your mouth. He showed you that pain doesn't need to be denied, that emptiness doesn't need to be filled, and that presence, when it's real, is enough. Zeno said that living well is living according to nature, but for that, it is necessary to first relearn to listen to it, and the animal was the first voice you understood, without vocabulary, without explanation. He arrived as someone who didn't need to be understood, only felt. And you felt. You felt that something was wrong inside you, and that he knew. You felt that something needed to change, and that he was there not to change for you, but to show you that it was possible. Now he is gone, or moved away, or just went back to being what he was before, a being that walks alongside nature, without needing to belong to anyone. But you stayed, and with you also remained the transformation. You learned that answers don't always come in the form of ideas. Sometimes they come with fur, or feathers, or paws, or silent eyes that look inside you without judging, and without expecting anything in return. You thought you were alone, but the universe responded. And now you know, life listens, even when you don't speak, and responds, even when you don't understand. The animal was not a coincidence, it was a message. It was the LOGOS touching your soul with what it could still accept. Simplicity. He was just a body, carrying a cosmic message. Like this video if you have also been touched by an animal at the exact moment when everything seemed to collapse. Comment if you feel that it was not a coincidence, and share with those who still believe that nature does not respond to our silent pains. Because sometimes the presence that heals has no voice, it has breathing, and appears only when the soul is ready to listen to what no word could ever say.